Aloha Kona Stories readers. I'm Todd, and today we're going to have a question and answer session with local author Sara Ackerman, whose new book, Red Sky Over Hawaii, came out on June 9th. And Sara, could you tell us just a little bit about yourself and growing up in Hawaii?
Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining us. My name is Sara. I was born and raised on Oahu, and my grandparents lived on the Big Island. And I've been here for 5 years in Waimea. I am the author of 3 novels, Island of Sweet Pies and Soldiers, The Lieutenant's Nurse, and Red Sky Over Hawaii. And I'm really excited about this latest book because it's set at the volcano, which is one of my favorite places in the world.
Great. So, first question, please tell us what inspired you to write Red Sky Over Hawaii?
Well, I spent a lot of time at the volcano, and one day, a couple years ago, I was hiking down the Chain of Craters Road. I was just exploring. I didn't really know where I was going, and I came upon an old house. So if you have been to Idaho, you know what I'm talking about. This is a really beautiful, rustic old house tucked away in the middle of nowhere, and I really had no idea what it was. And then when I went back and researched to see what the house, any history I could find about it, I learned that the house was built by Herbert Shipman in the event of, or in anticipation of, the Japanese attack or invasion that they thought was going to happen right after the Pearl Harbor attack. And so I think most of Hawaii was under the impression that we were pretty soon going to be invaded. So it was like a hideaway house, and so that intrigued me. And I knew I wanted to write a story about it, but I didn't know what it would be about at that point. So fast forward, a couple years later, I was at a writer's event or a book talk, and a woman I know had told me that her mother, or her friend's mother, had been, her parents had been taken away to an internment camp during the war, and they were a German family. And the girls were just left to fend for themselves. And so that was a really heartbreaking story. I found out some information about that. And then I kind of just decided to merge the 2 stories together. So there's kind of a unlikely group of people that end up at this hideaway house. Japanese fisherman and his son, a part Hawaiian woman that's kind of taking care of everybody, and then the 2 German girls. And a couple dogs, a couple Nene geese, and a big Great Dane.
Well, that's interesting. So what kind of research did you have to do for this novel?
Well, this is my 3rd World War II novel, and so I was able to at least build a lot upon things that I had already learned, as well as visiting the volcano a lot. There wasn't a lot to read out there. There aren't a lot of books about the volcano during the war, and this was like in the very beginning of the war, 1941. And so I did find a national park article, a really long publication that told all about the volcano in those times, and so that was really helpful. I also interviewed Haley Roner, an older woman who was in Hilo and Volcano during the war. Mm-hmm. She was very helpful, as well as my mom and a family friend that they always helped me with my books.
Why the interest in World War II Hawaii?
Well, as many of you know, if you've already read my books, my grandfather was the principal at Honokaa during the war at the school for 10 years. So he was the principal. My grandmother was a teacher there, and I grew up hearing all their stories, and it was just something that I feel there's all the World War II books mostly are about Europe, and so much went on here. There's so many little stories and about the lives of the people, not just the attack on Pearl Harbor. And so I really became interested in it through that.
And there's a quote on the front of your book. You can show it here. Can you tell us a little bit, where does the quote come from and what is it referring to?
I had an author friend. Usually when you write a book, you have to ask people to recommend your book, other authors. So Noelle Salazar, she's the author of The Flight Girls. She writes a beautiful and thoughtful novel that pays tribute to the islands, their people, and those who stand up for the ones who cannot. So that's the quote. I think what she refers to here are the Japanese and the Germans that were taken away and without any reason, and they were held for years, and they really didn't have a voice.
Can you tell us a little bit about your writing process and kind of start from when you wake up in the morning? It's a day when you're going to write. What does that process look like?
Well, before I start writing a book, I spend a few months thinking about it, thinking about story ideas, doing research. I get a lot of my story ideas also while I'm researching. And then I will do a rough outline. So I don't really plan. I plan a little bit of the book, and I know how I try to imagine how I want it to end. That always changes though. And so once I have that ready, then I'll wake up and I'll start writing in the morning, kind of early, 5:30 or 6, and write for about an hour and a half, maybe 2. I can't write for too long. And then take a break, walk, or if I was teaching, go to school, and then I'll write again, usually again in the afternoon. I try to write 700 to 1,000 words a day. A novel is about, say, mine are generally 85 to 95,000 words.
So 1,000 words a day, is that 1,000 words at a time, or do you take a break? I know you spend a lot of time walking, hiking, paddling, swimming as kind of your downtime. Is that where you get energized and inspired and continue the creative process?
It's really important to just go for walks. Driving is really good if I have to drive to Kona or Volcano, and swimming and paddling. And then I'll go alone so I can just kind of let my brain just meander. And also, I feel like your subconscious mind does a lot of the work for you if you give it time to just be.
Great. Last question. Can you tell us or give us a little sneak preview of your 4th novel coming out next summer? I know it's early, but just a quick synopsis.
So my next book, my publisher wanted another World War II novel set in Hawaii. So my 4th book currently is titled Radar Girls. Book cover, or the titles will often change. My publisher usually comes up with them. And so this one is about the women's air raid defense on Oahu. It's a fascinating group of women all around, actually not on Oahu, but started on Oahu, and then they had them on all the islands, and the women were in charge of the defense of the Hawaiian Islands in terms of plotting all the planes, aircraft that were coming through using radar, which was a new technology at that point.
Oh, great. Well, I know there's a lot of questions we could ask, but thank you. And what's the best way for someone to get in touch with you, find out more about your books, possibly send an email?
Well, I like Instagram, and I'm Sara Ackerman Books on Instagram. On Facebook, I'm Ackerman Books, and my website is ackermanbooks.com, and those are great ways to get in touch with me. And if you're on this island, I also can sometimes attend book clubs.
Fantastic.
Yeah, if I'm not busy.
Yeah.
It's fun. I love to do that.
Any requests for book clubs, just go to ackermanbooks.com and you can get a hold of Sara via email. But thank you so much for joining us, and have a beautiful rest of your day.
Thank
Aloha.
you, everybody.